Well, with us is Luca Jellinek, Head of European Interest Rates at Credit Agricole Corporate and Investment Banking. Hi, Luca.
Hello there.
Gosh, there's so much to talk about. Where should we start? Let's start with Greece. All sorts of talk about whether it's going to restructure or not. Which camp are you in?
I think very marginally we're in the camp that Greece will try to struggle through and not restructure in the foreseeable future, but the risk is high.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
how can it manage to struggle through when, of course, yields are at record highs right along the curve, and the pressure is very much mounting, isn't it?
The pressure is huge. Of course, these are yields, they're not yields at which they're borrowing. They're getting money on soft loans, and those loans look like they're getting rolled over for a period of time. So they'll try and get their deficit back into shape. They're not having a lot of success doing that. That's a really crucial story.
Yeah, sorry.
Rather than follow so much what this politician says or what that politician says, the really worrying thing about Greece is that they're not closing that gap.
And which ultimately means that it will restructure, just not right now. I mean, so when are we talking?
If they can't close the gap, at some point between 13 and 15, they have to restructure.
Yeah. What are the implications of that? I mean, what will be the ramifications, the knock-on effect to the rest of the Eurozone?
You're talking about recapitalization in a lot of banks, in Germany, in France, and all over Europe. You're talking about, of course, a huge political impact, medium term, in Greece and elsewhere. It's not a pretty thing, this so-called restructuring. It's a default by another name. You gave 100, you don't get 100 back on a government bond. That's bad news. Elsewhere,
Luca, Finland, Eurosceptic parties gained 40% of the vote, and we know what that means. What are the implications for bailouts, especially Portugal's, which is under negotiation right now? Because as we know, all 17 Euro nations have to approve bailouts.
It's going to make it, let's say, interesting. Let's remember, though, that when Greece was being bailed out, Slovakia had a very similar kind of opposition. They said they have a higher per capita GDP than we do. Why should we give them any money? Not the case with Finland, but of course this party does not want to give, a done deal to Portugal. It will make things much stickier, and I think with the difficulties that Portugal itself has on the political front, they've just changed in government. They're going into elections on June the 5th. It'll just make things a lot noisier than they would have been otherwise, and we've seen that in the price action.
And as Greece struggles and Portugal struggles with their fiscal burden, Luca, we've got ECB officials speaking over the weekend saying, yes, pretty much so, rates are heading even higher, possibly by as much as markets say 50 basis points by the end of the year. Is that what you're penciling in?
Definitely 50 basis points by the end of the year. Some people now are looking at perhaps even a little bit more. I think the ECB will be very gradual, but they're definitely raising rates. And that, I think, obviously brings pressure on Spain, on Italy, countries that are still borrowing in the market. You can see Portuguese bond yields and Greek yields going to crazy levels, but the fact is they're not borrowing right now. But Spain and Italy are. Now, their yields are still at a much more manageable level, but they can use all the help they can get, and higher rates does not help.
Does that mean we avoid debt of the likes of Spain, the likes of Italy, possibly even Belgium as well? What's our strategy when it comes to those countries?
We're fairly positive. And the reason we're positive is if you look at those countries, differently from Greece and to some extent Portugal, they have been successful in reducing their deficits. So aside from the noise, aside from what's going on in the market and all the nerves, in fact, people are understanding that the fundamentals are improving. So I think medium term, you'll see the spike in spreads as a buying opportunity.
And outside of those three, what about the core, the Frances, the Germanys? How do you fancy them right now?
Well, generally speaking, we're looking for much higher rates, partly because of the ECB and partly because of inflation and everything that's happening in the stock market. And on that basis, we think that all yields are going to be rising, so we're bond bears. Some of the medium-yielding ones, like Spain and Italy, I think will give a better return by year-end than the core.
Luca, thanks for joining us today. Luca there from Credit Agricole CIB.